Yo, what's up, guys? I wanted to talk about a different topic today and actually use the degree I have in politics. I think, you know, I wanted to address immigration, one of the like hot button issues, one of the biggest talking points for most politicians around the world, actually. And I just feel like people are getting it wrong. And I think the problem is that people are not arguing with facts, or they're using specific facts that prove a point, but they are specifically ignoring facts that kind of disprove their point. And I think what it really comes down to is fear mongering, and it's them jumping on the bandwagon. You have to understand, these politicians, they don't have much to ride on. The energy they use is anger and frustration because, I mean, it's so easy to source. We live in the UK. It's so easy to be angry and feel like shit. So jumping on that bandwagon, oh, knife crime, black people, stuff like that. It's easy to just latch onto that, and then the politician says, "Oh well, if you elect me, I'm going to change all of that." It won't happen. They've said it before, and nothing changes. And I think my frustration just comes from people having little to no information on immigration and being told a few things by politicians or social media, and that forming their opinion. And I heard this one quote that said, sometimes having small information about something is worse than no information. And I feel like that's what's happened with immigration. Essentially, people only have the information presented online to them and haven't done their own research, which is very worrying. And it's basically just people having beliefs over something that's false, it's just not true. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about it and I guess get my point across. Technically, I could flood this whole video with multiple statistics and graphs and studies proving my point, but I don't want to overwhelm people. I think I'm going to try and use, the easiest language and easiest points to make that where, the general information you have on immigration is wrong, but also explaining, a little bit about where you've heard this negative information from and what the actual issue is, because there are issues. And again, I'm not trying to say there isn't any issues here. There are definitely issues with immigration, but it's just, very much exacerbated. So the first misconception I want to address is immigrants are taking people's jobs. This one is like the easiest one to get a reaction out of those that don't read and don't do any research, and just make them angry, get that fear mongering energy flaring up, and then boom, you get your vote. And the thing is, this is just economically correct. You can search this anywhere. Just please go online and take a look. This is incorrect. I think what people misunderstand is that immigrants tend to take jobs that a lot of UK citizens don't want to take. So we're talking about social care, jobs at lower levels, jobs in the NHS like nursing and stuff. And this is not me attacking social work or nursing. I'm a social worker myself, and this is just what we see day in day out. And obviously, you go and do your own research, you'll also see this. I think you need to understand that a lot of people obviously have involvement with the NHS or maybe even social workers and these sorts of public sector jobs and work that you then think, oh my God, immigrants are there, they're taking everything. And it's like, go out and look for yourself and see how many of our own UK citizens are applying for those jobs. It's just not the case. And one study I will throw in here is in 2022, a study from the London School of Economics. It literally found no evidence that immigration lowers wages or increases unemployment. I think the misconception people have is jobs being outsourced. There's a very big difference. If immigrants come into this country, everyone, once they get their citizenship or whatnot, everyone's treated the same and everyone has to abide by the same law. That's not necessarily what's taking your job. If you lose your job to someone else, it's very, very likely that it's been outsourced to like India or South Africa, where a lot of these employers can jump through hoops and find creative ways to basically pay them peanuts and obviously lower their cost of production. And obviously, as a business owner, those are things that people are going to want to do. I mean, just look around you. I think Microsoft laid off workers. I think maybe it was Activision. I think it was a gaming company that laid off workers. And, you know, people are thinking immigration is still the biggest issue. I think people need to understand that, these companies and businesses are finding ways, creative ways to use AI, or hire, as I mentioned before, hire people outside of the country who they're able to basically pay nothing to fund a lot of their productivity. So immigration isn't taking your job. I think you should be more worried about local government and rich people finding creative ways to basically pay you nothing. So the next misconception, one of my favorites, they're draining the NHS. So this is the argument that basically immigrants are putting a strain on our health services. I think what annoys me so much about this one is people often think about the amount of people seeking NHS support. So this is, speaking to their GP or going to the hospital, going to A&E. And I think people immediately ignore how immigrants are literally the backbone of some of these services. As I mentioned before, immigrants are taking a lot of the jobs where, a lot of UK born residents would not stand a chance. You can't be a nurse, being spat at, being punched because a drunk person has come in on a Friday night. Half of you wouldn't survive. I'm a social worker. Even I've been spat on. Our job is to protect children. Unfortunately, we go into parts and different communities where it's very challenging. You wouldn't survive. I'm just going to be honest and blunt with that. But I think what frustrates me more is the fact that immigrants are just looked down on when it comes to how much support they give it. And obviously, there is an argument that wait times are too long and stuff like that. However, without immigrations, the NHS would literally be crippled. Roughly 1 out of 6 NHS workers are foreign national, and 20% of adult social care workers are foreign national. And I believe it's the same for children social care workers. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that we are already in shortages now as we speak. If we were to, let's say, get rid of those immigrant workers, the NHS would collapse, social care would collapse, education would collapse. There are so many aspects of the public sector that would collapse immediately if immigration was immediately stopped. Now, of course, some people will say we're not asking for immigration to stop, just to be managed. Yeah, and I understand that, but you have to understand the rhetoric of some of these politicians, like the Reform Party and stuff like that. This is not, they are willing to take very sharp measures, which will have such a significant impact on just the working people, the working man. And the issue is that you have to remember these politicians are not using the NHS. Maybe for a call here or there, they are working, they're going private, they do not need it. So they don't see the shortages. I think it's different for us that go into A&E and go into the GPs day in, day out. We see the stress that these workers have and how long the wait times are. These politicians don't see that. So don't believe that rubbish of, oh, the immigrants are crippling the NHS. No, they're holding it on their back. That's literally what they're doing. Due to just the general decline of sausages, the UK, as we speak, are literally recruiting doctors and nurses from foreign countries. Like this is happening as we speak. So you need to understand it's necessary. I think this one's quite self-explanatory. I don't think I need to go into it too much. I think it's quite clear. Please do a little bit of research. Without immigrants, our NHS would collapse, and it's just a poor argument to suggest that immigrants are putting a strain on it and not acknowledging what benefit we actually get from immigration regarding supporting the NHS. The last misconception I wanted to touch on this video is that argument that the UK is full. And that one's quite frustrating because this is really one of the points where when you don't have facts, you just sound like an idiot. I'm not trying to be rude, but that's just the reality of the situation. I think, you know, we are in a housing crisis. There's no doubt about that. But you need to understand that the UK is just not it's not full. I mean, I'm gonna go into a little bit of numbers here, so just keep up with me. The UK has about 281 people per square kilometer, yeah? And that sounds like a lot. But when you look at other countries like the Netherlands, they have 500 per square kilometer. Belgium have 380 per square kilometer. I can go on and on. I think people don't understand that, yes, London is crowded, but much of the UK isn't. There are entire regions in the north, in Wales and in Scotland, with declining populations and labour shortages. And those are areas that are actually desperate for young workers, including immigrants, to keep services running essentially. And I think when people say the UK is full, they speak about the NHS, housing, and transport essentially being under pressure. But I think people are not understanding that this could have been alleviated with proper management and planning from government. Since 2010, local authorities, and I guess for people that don't understand, local authorities is like the area. But yeah, the politicians or governments in the area, haven't funded this local area. So since 2010, local authority budgets have been slashed, basically meaning fewer homes, fewer schools, more pressure on GPs, all of that stuff. And also, we have private developers sitting on land and basically building luxury flats that no one can afford or are leaving properties empty. And I think what's frustrating about that is, yes, we need social housing, of course we do, but I believe I read this somewhere. Don't quote me, but we have more empty homes than people on the street. So essentially, if we had a system to support people, we shouldn't really have the homeless crisis that we have at the moment. And I just want you to think about that. I mean, look, we can go into conspiracies all we want, but let's be real. I mean, if our country wanted to fix these things the way they should, they would, and they're simply just not doing that. It's easy to say immigrants have caused this, but what actually has happened is the government has cut services, the government hasn't invested in growing cities, and we've essentially allowed landlords and corporations to take control of housing and wages. And I think blaming blaming immigrants is like blaming the fire alarm for a fire. It's not the population that's the problem. It's how the country is being run and how the rich have been allowed to run away with things and basically do as they please. And this isn't me ignoring, some of the issues that can arise from a lot of immigration. Obviously, at the end of the day, there are some areas, specifically London, that have rapid population growth, which is going to strain local services. We do have some communities that are starting to feel left behind. Obviously, this is the UK community, that the young people and children, all of those people born here and have obviously seen their country grow and change in a different way. It's important to validate their feelings and the change that's happening around them. And also, we have a lot of labor exploitation and stuff like that. Obviously, some of these immigrants that are coming here aren't even being treated fairly. There's so much, and obviously, this can be a very, very, very long video, but I don't want to make it that. I wanted this to be like a quick pick up, listen to, and just understand where maybe some of your misconceptions for immigration could be changed. Hopefully, I tried to not make this very statistic heavy or anything like that, but just for you to kind of get a brief understanding about why some of these things people are saying and some of these big buzzwords they're using to make an argument that all immigration is bad, I think is just false. And this is just kind of to help you with that a little bit. So yeah, I think I may have to make a part two for this because I didn't think it would actually get this long of a video, and I feel like smaller videos are easier to digest and just take bits of information from. So yeah, I still want to talk about who I actually think is benefiting from this sort of fear mongering of saying immigrants are bad, immigrants are this, and also want to talk about a little bit more about the actual real problems and kind of solutions around that. So I think I'll save that for another video. But yeah, I guess if you like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.